Okay.
I heard that the problem was the battery and it got fixed.
I'm sorry?
I understand that the battery was not working well. That was some of the problems with the
The other computer. So,
reception. Oh, the other
no.
computer.
no, yeah. And, am I audible now?
Very well, yes.
Oh, good. Okay. So I don't know what the problem was yesterday, but okay, now if everything's good and the screen is on also?
Yes, loud and clear, big and
Okay.
clear, yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. So the Gemara starts on the page, the last couple of words on the page before. I didn't put up the other page, but it says in the bottom, Tanya Rebbe Yomer. So those are the words that are proceeding on the Ayin Testament base, and now we're on top of the pay. Continuing in the sugya about eating. Achilu shtia is asur on Yom Kippur. So now the issue has to do with the shir. Yesterday, the subject was about a kosevas agasa, and now the Gemara continues about a side subject. Tani Rebbe Yomer kol hashirun kulan b'kazayis chos mitumas sochalim. That in general, whatever it says in the Torah shir of food, it has to do with kazayis, and that's because achila, the minimum eating, is considered a kazayis. But by tumas sochalim means that the food could become tummy. Food could become tummy. However, it had contact with the sheretz, with the mace, with the nefela, food becomes tummy. So how much food has to be, what's the volume of the food in order to have tumah? The Rishonim talk about, it surely means that it does not give off tumah unless it's going to be a kazbeitza. We're going to see soon in a couple of lines that the share of tumas, ochlam is not a kazayis, it's a kazbeitza. But what they do talk about is talking about giving off tumah or to become tumah itself. Food to receive tumah, and that is a machlokes if it's the rice or rabbanan, even less than a kibetza. So surely the Gemara is talking about to give off tumah has to be a kibetza, maybe also as far as receiving tumah also. But we won't go into those details. The subject here is called tumas sochalim. So the shir for tumas sochalim is not going to be a kazayis, it's going to be different than all the other shirim. Kala shirim kulam the kazayis because the tumas sochalim that the shir is going to be a kibetza. Sheshina akasud b'mashmon v'shinu chachamim v'shirim. Since the Torah, it says something in the presentation that the Torah says by tumas sochalim is not the same regular word as achila. It uses a different term. So therefore, we know that the shir is different. Usually the word is achila, so it means a kazayis. Here, the pasuk changes the mashmos, the way it's expressed itself, and therefore the chachamim explained that it's not a kazayis. The Gemara will get that on a couple of lines, but first the Gemara says, right, Yom Kippur. The reason why we are impressed with the nuance of the word that it can mean something else is because by Yom Kippur we find that. We find by Yom Kippur, it's not a kazayis. We said the whole sugi is a koseves. And the Gemara is going to say right away because it doesn't say do not eat. It says you should afflict yourself, and that doesn't have to do with eating. So since you find that the Torah doesn't always say kazayis, and it changes the term in order to tell us that it's not a kazayis, so we're going to take also the nuance that it says betumas sochalim. Also, we're going to take it seriously, as the Gemara soon can explain that it's more of a din. It's more of a fine kind of a change, and it wouldn't be so noticeable. But by Yom Kippur that we see that beferish that it says a different term and therefore means a different shir. So too by tumas sochalim we're going to say the same thing. Since you see by Yom Kippur the Torah changed and it doesn't mean a kazai, so too by tumas sochalim we're also going to take the nuance seriously. The Gemara explains my shina kasav mashmo. Where do you see by Yom Kippur that the Torah changed the term? Because it says that you should be afflicted. Whoever doesn't afflict himself, it doesn't say anything about eating. That point is affliction, and over there it means that the shir is different than a kazayis. Why does that mean that the shir is different? The shir is not a kazayis, the shir is a koseves. Fine. Why do you need a raya from Yom Kippur to say that it's different also by tumas sochalim? For whatever reason you say by Yom Kippur is different because it has a different term, so we're going to find right away by tumas sochalim also has some kind of fancy term. So why is that not just as good reason to say? You have to say the reason why we take it seriously is because you find by Yom Kippur that it means a different shir. For whatever reason, the same Kippur is different because it had a different term. So also by tumas sochalim. The Gemara says no. So the Gemara is very vague, very not explaining itself because the Gemara didn't yet tell us what the term used by ochalim is. The Gemara is going to say in a couple of right away in 2 lines that over there the pasuk says yikala ochal asher yachel. We can look a little ahead of us. That's the strange lashon. It doesn't just say kala ochel. Over there it wants to say food. The pasuk shad is food that's edible. Food that is eaten. So that is susceptible to tumah. Maybe the shear, maybe the kind of food edible, but it's a little bit different than usual. Usually you would say food, and here it says food that is eaten. That's so that the Gemara says over here that it's not such a conspicuous and outstanding nuance that we might not take it so seriously. It says ochel, but in Kippur that it says a whole different word. Lo sunam. We see that the term means it. I mean to say different. It's not a kazayis. Or else we would have thought everything's a kazayis and don't make such a big chiddush and say that it's not a kazayis. Once you see by Yom Kippur with Ferish that it's not a kazayis, so too we're going to take this nuance also seriously. We just might think that the word kol is the way the pasuk talks. But now that we see that in Kippur, we're taking it seriously. It's beferish, a different shir. So too, Tumas HaCholim. And now the Gemara opens up the sugi of Tumas HaCholim. We're going on a bonus now. We're going on a cruise. Nothing to do with our subject. We have in Kippur the shir is a kosefes. And now we're just going to say that also by other shirim, by Tumas HaCholim, the shir is going to be a kibetza. And now the Gemara says, where do you get it from? Tumas HaCholim kibetza manolim. Here it throws in already the shir is a kibetza. We said again that it's surely the shir is kibetza to give off Tumah to receive Tumas HaCholim Rishonah. So first of all, said in the name of Rabbi Loza, we're going to see soon. He's going to say his own opinion also. But so far, he's saying the name of his Rebbe. That's the pasuk. That's a little bit of a nuance that we're now taking seriously. That it doesn't mean regular kazayas. What's the drash? Food that comes from a food. A kazayas doesn't come from food. Zayis comes from a tree, and olive comes from an olive tree. Doesn't come that olive tree is not food. Yeah, the fact that it says is a food which comes from a food. Be'ezeh is a basis tanagola. So an egg comes from a chicken. The chicken is also food. So since the pasuk hints to us that it's food that comes from a food, so that's going to be a egg. An egg is a food which comes from a food. Eggs comes from a chicken. The Gemara says, how about a gedi? Goat comes from a mother goat. Mother goat, also called it's ochel from ochel. And maybe the share is only going to be the size of a goat. The Gemara says, shchita, it's not called food. The goat, when it's born, is not called food. It's not a food. You have to shecht it still. The zayis. The mother is also not a food. Yeah, so it's not called food. It's not that you can't call it food. You can't call a goat food till you shecht it. The aim of ben pekua. How about ben pekua? Ben pekua means if you shechted the mother and the fetus is found inside, you're allowed to eat it without shchita. So it's a food and it's born from a food. The Gemara says no, Tom Kriya, you have to at least kill it. You're not allowed to eat it live. You have to kill it. So it's also not called a food. And you see when the live goat inside, there's a goat inside, it's not called food. But the Gemara says, okay, we got it down to an egg. But maybe who says a chicken egg? Maybe it's an egg of a big bird. The name of basis by Yochli. By Yochli is a big, huge bird. The Gemara says exaggeration about some.
Ostrich is a typical big bird.
Okay, good. Maybe the Gemara makes it really, really big. The Gemara makes exaggerated big, but we won't take the exaggeration. The Gemara talks about that it's enough to destroy 60 cities. So we're not going to take it literally, but it means that it's a big bird. Like you say, an ostrich egg, whatever it might be. I don't think that it's an ostrich, but whatever it is. But maybe it's a big bird. How can you take a chicken egg? Chicken egg is not the biggest thing. The Gemara says that the pasuk is saying something. This is saying that you have to take the minimum. You can't say jump to say the shear is so big. If it says an egg, so the minimum egg, not so much. But the Gemara says, okay, there are smaller eggs. They may be the support the zutatuba. So maybe talk about a smaller egg, the smaller sparrow egg. They're very small. So if the whole drash is only going to be that it has to be a food from a food, so why did it hop on a chicken egg? Maybe it's going to be a smaller pigeon egg, a sparrow egg. So this was all Rabbi in the name of Rabbi Loza. If you don't go back a second, that was Rabbi in the name of Rabbi Loza. And the Gemara ends up with a kasha on him. That if the whole drash is going to be a food from a food, we don't know that it's chicken egg. So now Rabbi Loza is saying a different drash. The drash is ochel chat ochel basachas. It's a food which can be eaten in one shot. It means the maximum food that you can get in one gulp. How much food can you swallow in one gulp? So that's not a kazai. Kazai is very small. You can get a lot of it.
That sounds like Mali Lugma in drink.
Okay. Okay. Here the Gemara says that happens to be a kabetza. The shira chachamim ain't beis abuya machzik goes to the beis tangolas. It has nothing to do inherently with the egg of a chicken. It just happens to be. They're really talking about the shira is a gulp, one as much as you could eat. Not there it's drinking. Not gulp is gulp maybe is a word in only liquid, but as much food as you can swallow in one swallow full. So and that happens to be an egg, of course. Don't take an egg and try to swallow a hard-boiled egg. But if you take a a raw egg, the volume of an egg, so you can be able to swallow a chicken egg in one swallow. So that's the shear of Tumas Ocholin. End of the sugya. So just to sum it up, the Gemara went on a side point. Since you find by Yom Kippur that the shear is not a kazayis, because the Torah says a different term, doesn't say don't eat, it says you should afflict yourself, and the shear is kasevis. So now we look at other things also, we find other shear. Someone mentioned to me that yesterday's Gemara also, at the end, it talked about the shear for Bechs and Muslim was going to be achila sheish basvia also, since it says v'chalta b'savata, so it's a little different term. That's also an example. That's something that the Torah says a little different nuance, so it doesn't mean a kazayis over there, it means a kabetza. The Gemara doesn't mention that over here. The Gemara says by Yom Kippur, you see that as a kosevis. So too, when it says a strange term of kol ochel asher yochel, is to be darshan, and the shear is not going to be a kazayis. First, the Gemara tried in the name of Rabbi Elazar that it means food which comes from a food, but then we had a difficulty that maybe it's going to be a smaller egg. It doesn't mean that chicken egg. So the Gemara came out that has nothing to do with a chicken egg. It has to do really with the maximum amount you could get in one swallow. And it happens to be that that the maximum that he could swallow was going to be the size of an egg, chicken egg. And it seems that they just said a chicken egg because it happens to be. They looked around. What's the amount? Let's say they got 50 cc, whatever it is, and they say that that's the amount. That's called a chicken's egg. At the end of the sugya. And tumas acholin is food. The food becomes tamei when it came contact with tamei.
What does it help?
What is what?
It's like the person could really do test it on himself. Why doesn't he need chicken egg?
It's not a question of test. Question how much food? It's what they're giving a standard now. We want to give a standard. How much food is mikabel tumah? It's nothing about anybody eating it. Nobody's eating the food. We're talking about tumah. So we say how much food is mikabel tumah or how much food gives off tumah. The size of an egg. That's a nice way to say it. If you have something to measure with. New Gemara, mamish new Gemara. Very all Gemara is interesting, but this might be extra interesting. I guess you're allowed to say that. I'm Rabbi Elazar. Somebody ate chaylev. So he doesn't have the opportunity to bring a korban right now. No Beis Hamikdash, but Beis Hashem, the Beis Hamikdash will soon be built. He wants to bring a korban chatas. So it says he shouldn't. It says that if you ate chaylev, maybe I said it a little too much. The Gemara is going to explain it. But someone ate chaylev, he should write down in his notebook how much he ate. Maybe the Bezdin will come and Yabra B'Shirin. The Gemara is going to explain what that means. The Gemara doesn't yet know what does he think. Did he eat a kazayis? Did he not eat a kazayis? Of course, the share of eating chaylev is the kazayis. So if someone ate a kazayis of chaylev is a fats also certain fats of also some amutas, some also. If he ate chaylev, which is also chayiv kores, the shogeg is chayiv korban chatas. So he should write down in his notebook how much he ate, because maybe the Bezdin Sanhedrin will come, but Mashiach is going to come with the Beis Hamikdash. The Sanhedrin will come and they'll Yabra B'Shirin. The Gemara has a question what that means. Let's see the two choices. Then we'll go back to the words. Now Yabra B'Shirin, what those words mean? That he thinks that he did not eat shir chaylev. He thinks he didn't eat a kazayis. We'll talk about small kazayis, large kazayis, and a benoni, medium size. And when you go buy olives, they say if it's small, big, medium. So the halacha says that it's a medium size kazayis. Nowadays we know there's all kinds of problems with how big a kazayis is. We talk about it Pesach time. Big issues how big a kazayis is. But,
I do, excuse me, whenever you think is appropriate, I do have a picture of the three different kinds of kazesim.
Okay.
Either at the end of the Indian or now, whatever you think.
Okay,
What's that, Nick?
that's the egg. That's the egg of Vayichni. Okay. The Gemara says it's a huge egg. So I don't know if this is also exaggerated.
No,
so,
this is a zayas. It says kazayas.
No, this is the egg, right?
Well, I don't know. This is large. This is medium. This is small. I see.
Okay.
Okay.
I imagine that imagine the picture meant to show us the huge egg, but okay, but everything's good. Okay, Yashiko, thank you. Back to okay, thank you. Okay, so the Gemara says at this point the Gemara thinks that he doesn't think he had a kazayas. He according to the serum of his generation, the Bezdin says he ate less than a kazayas. But he should write down in his notebook how much he ate, because it might be when Bezdin is going to come, they'll say that was a kazayas, so he should bring a korban. At this point, the Gemara says a possibility. If somebody at chaylev, he thinks less than a kazayas, he still should write it down, because maybe it's an Edmund will come and say that it was a kazayas, and he should bring a korban. But the Gemara assume will say how it fits into the words. It doesn't. Yabra B'Shirin hasn't fit into the words so far, but the Gemara will explain that. How much? Right? How much did he eat? How much did he eat? He ate 10 cc. So he shouldn't just figure that's less than a kazais. Nowadays they say how big a kazais is. He should write down about 10 cc. And then when Sanhedrin comes, Mashiach comes, he should go to Sanhedrin and ask, 10 cc is that a kazais? My chayim. And if they say that he ate it, that it's a kazais, he should bring a korban. But the Gemara says it's not true. But Tanya, Asher lo si asana b'shikago b'Hashem. That's the pasuk that talks about Vayichiv to bring a korban chatas. It says if someone does an affair that it shouldn't have been done by a mistake and he's guilty. So the Gemara says, Ashav mi diyaso maybe korban al shigigasa. A person only brings a korban if he would have known he forgot that it's chaylev. That's why he ate it. But if he would have known, he wouldn't have eaten it. What if he wouldn't have eaten it? He would have eaten it even if he would have known that it's chaylev. So then he doesn't bring a korban. Let's say the standard case the Gemara talks about is, let's say the Maisi didn't know that it's chaylev. But if he would have known it's chaylev, also would have eaten it anyway. He would have done it amazing. Even though right now he did it b'shogeg, he doesn't bring a korban. He can't bring a korban. Only if he would not have done it, if he would have known. And yet the Gemara is saying that if he would have known that it's, even if he would have known that it was chaylev, he would have eaten it because he thinks that's less than a You can talk about Chatzi Shivasa Min Torah or not, might be a question to ask. Let's say they make it easy. Chatzi Shes Mutter, some of the rice he'd be allowed to eat it. So how could you call him that he, now when he ate it was less than a shear. And then Bezdin comes and says, you should know, that was a kazai. That was really a kazai. The Bezdin at your time didn't think so. But the Bezdin now, they changed and they said that this is a kazai. So you should bring a korban. No, because at the time he didn't think it was a kazai. So even if he would have known that it's chaylev, he would have eaten it. So he wouldn't bring a korban. So he wouldn't be chayav a korban, even if they say that was really a kazai, he's not chayav a korban.
So why write it down?
That's the most kasha. That's the most kasha. No showed me the they maybe korban al. So he shouldn't write it down because even if they're going to say, he knows that right now it's not a kazai. So even if the person will change and say that is a kazai, it's not chayav chatas. So the Gemara says the other way. He thinks he ate a kazai. He ate a shear that at the time the person says that is a kazai. So the point is, don't write down chayav korban for eating chaylev because maybe when the Sanhedrin is going to come and you ate whatever it is, 10 cc and you 27 cc, and you think that it is, maybe they're going to say no, that's less than the kazayas, and you're not chayav korban. The next Sanhedrin is going to come and say that you're not chayav unless you eat a big size. You ate a Beinoni, you ate an average size kazayas. No, you only chayav if you eat a big size. And that's the Gemara's pshat. So whatever, we're not going into the show. The Gemara just talks about the small, medium, and large. So the Gemara says that in the Mishnah, in Kalim, it says that the shear for kazayas is not big and not small. It's a Beinoni. Maybe the Sanhedrin is going to change their mind and think and bring a proof and have an opinion that you only chayiv on a big kazayas. So don't just write the chayiv chatas for eating chaylev, because maybe when the Sanhedrin is going to come, they're going to say you're not chayiv. So write down the details of the avera. So every avera that a person writes down that he did, he should write down the details because maybe the shear will change. That's the end of the Gemara. What does it say? When a person did an avera, he should write it down that he's bringing the korban. He shouldn't don't just write down that I did avera. Write down the details because maybe Bezdin will say you didn't do avera. They talk about. We're not going to talk about it, but the Achronim talk about that if the Sanhedrin changed and they said that it's only a big size, but at the time they held that even a small size, does that mean that now Lamafrei he didn't do an avera? At the time the Bezdin said that is kazais. There's a change with the Bezdin as it changes. This Gemara seems at face value, the Gemara seems to say that retroactively, if he says, if they say now the share is bigger, so retroactively he didn't do an avera. But that's not
Maybe you
not
could say
simple.
he did avera, but he did not have cover.
Why not? That'll be a question. Why not? That's what I talk about. I don't want to go deeper in it, but that's the subject that maybe do you say that the avera goes to Mafreya from what the President says now, or you go according to each version as they are. This
Do we have other examples like that?
anytime the President changes a psak, they had a psak till one time. Something is trade, something is not trade. All kinds of questions. If
How long?
certain,
Forever? As long as the person's
as
still alive?
whenever there's a President, when a President comes in, they changed halacha. They had an opinion in one generation, and then another President came and they changed the psak. Well, the President themselves changed the psak. Sometimes they might we made it, not made it. If they made a Torah Bar Mishnah, if they mamish made a mistake, so then they made a mistake. Nothing to do. But if they didn't make a mistake, but it's different if Shikol Adas, that till now they held this way, and now they held a different way. So does the halacha surely changes, but does that mean that retroactively it changes? And as far as we're concerned, the whole time that halacha was different, or this was the halacha at the time, and this was the halacha at that time. So this is one of the sugis where they bring proof from the sugya, but just learning superficially, the Gemara seems to say that whatever happens now, retroactively we look at it also, but it's not simple. But
Excuse me,
that's what the Gemara
Rebbe.
says. Some avera, and he's writing down that he's going to be a korban, so he should write down the details of the avera because maybe Bezdin will say that it's not an avera. If the halacha might change.
Rav Citrin,
It does say the Gemara. The question is, Moshe is asking that whenever a person does that, but the Gemara takes for granted, he should write down if he did an avera. Any avera which is chayv chatas, which is the chayv korban, so he should write down. If he doesn't have to have a chatas tshuva, so then do right away. And Yom Kippur do tshuva. But if it's an avera which needs a korban, so he should write down. The Gemara says that Rabbi Shmuel one time he tilted the candle and he wrote down Ani Shmuel, I forgot his name. I forgot. Karasi ve'itisi kisheyavi kisheyvara besamikdash avdi chata shmeina. I'm going to bring.
By the way, it fits him very well. He said exactly why. He didn't say Ani Chayv Chata.
No, but also did he write the shir? Oh, he said, oh, not the shir over there. The shir is just that he tilted it.
I mean, maybe the idea is every
Okay.
time, because something
Write
might
down.
change, so
So
write down
the
exactly.
the
Yes.
details. Very well, maybe the halacha will change. Yes, please.
Yes, Rav Sharon.
I'm sorry.
Yarbeh v'shurim. Then, so in the end, what that means is that the person himself who thought he did an avera, he increased the amount and he was erroneous.
No. And at the end of the Gemara is good. The Gemara means at the end, the Gemara says that Yarbeh v'shurim means that the Bezdin will say that the share is bigger than you thought, bigger than it was. You had a certain amount. The reason you should write it down is because maybe
They'll make it bigger than it was. Right, I'm sorry. Yeah,
your share was less than the share. But the Gemara now
even
is
though you thought you're right.
that's good. But the question is, the Gemara first suggested maybe this member means that he thought that he ate less than a share, and he should write it down because maybe Bezdin will say that he ate a share, that he ate enough, and he's chayav. And the Gemara slugged it up because he wouldn't have, it wasn't Shavmi Yediyah, or whatever. But the Gemara says the words don't make sense. How did you think that it means that? The words say maybe his business, maybe they're going to increase. According to your Pshat, it should have said they're going to decrease. If you ate a certain amount and you think it's not a share of kazayis, you should write it down. Maybe they're going to decrease the share. That's what the Gemara says. According to what we held originally, we thought that there's going to say Yechayiv korban on a small kazayis. You ate a small kazayis. You think you're not chayiv, and they're going to say Yechayiv even on a small kazayis. That's the kasha. What does it mean? It might be sure. It doesn't mean Shema Yah, but they're going to say the share is smaller. The Gemara answers Shema Yah b'karbonis machma shira. Maybe they're going to say Yechayiv more karbonis because the share changed. The share is really small. So that's the end of that Gemara. That if a person did an avera, the share is subject to change. We'll call it just that loosely. The share is subject to change if doesn't change their opinion, and therefore write down this Gemara summarize the whole section. That maybe they're going to say that even if you think you're chayiv, maybe you're not chayiv. So therefore, don't just write down your chayv korban, write down the details. So when you want to be in the korban, Bezdin will tell you if they think that you're chayv korban. New Gemara.
is an even shirim machmat shinuim based in?
Shema Yarbe B'Shir, the Shema Yarbe B'Shir. That's the Gemara's term. Maybe they're going to increase the shir. New Gemara. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Shiurim Onshin Halacha Moshe Messinai. It's Halacha Moshe Messinai, Shiurim and Onshin, which means the shiurim, like we know, the measurements for each avera, and also the onshim, the punishments. The Gemara says right away, onshim punishments are not Halacha Moshe Messinai. Onshim Michtav Ksivi. It says openly in the Torah about the onshim. This is the punishment for this avera, this punishment for this avera. Elachi Kama. Shiurim, I only underlined it because the computer didn't let me to highlight it, so nothing special about this. I wasn't able to. Shiurim Shalom Halacha Moshe Messinai. The measurements for which a person is punishable is Halacha Moshe Messinai, which means only one statement was said. Shiurim, that the mitzvah shiurim of the onshim, it's all Halacha Moshe Messinai. It means, how do you know?
Close to the rice.
It's what?
It's almost the rice.
It is the rice.
It is the rice.
How could you say it's not the rice?
I don't
The Torah says don't eat chaylev, so it has to be an amount. It has to be an amount. But the Torah didn't tell us. Doesn't say in the Torah how much. Doesn't say k'zayis. So it says here it's Halacha Moshe Messinai, that the shiurim of avera, that how much are you chayav? How much? That says the avera. Doesn't say how much. So the shiurim is Halacha Moshe Messinai. Also, other places the Gemara talks about the mitzvahs also. Matzah, how much matzah you have to eat. It's also Halacha Moshe Messinai. The shiurim that it says it's not Rabbanan. That's the side point for those that are interested. There's a Yerushalmi that says that it's Rabbanan, but it surely doesn't mean Rabbanan because, of course, the shiurim is the rice. So how could you say that the Torah says don't do an avera? It has to be some kind of shiurim. But it means that the Rabbanan are magdir, the rice. The Torah left open that the Rabbanan should decide what's called eating. The Torah says don't eat. What's called significant eating. So the Rabbanan are coming to be magdir, but it's not called Rabbanan. Sure, it's going to be the rice. But Agmar says Halacha Moshe Messinai. If it says the Kazai Shir is Kazai, it says Halacha Moshe Messinai.
Excuse me, Rebbe.
Yes, please.
Why is it so important for the Gemara that they should put in? I see that the only thing is instead of saying She'urin ve'onshin, he meant She'urin shel onshin. Why
Yes.
is it so important for the Gemara to put that in, to show us that how people can misinterpret what they say, or that, why do we care? Why don't they just say shell and go on with life?
The Gemara should have, Rabbi Yochanan was quoted the way he said it, the way it was said over from him. Maybe.
Why is it important? It's important to say over even if it's wrong.
I think that the Gemara constantly does that. It analyzes together with us. It brings us into the event. It's medrash where part of the analysis, but we're working it out.
Uh-huh.
It probably helps us to learn how to
To
analyze.
show it, to learn how to analyze, and also to see how it's important to get Masorah correct or something, or is somebody, they got it wrong, or do we assume that Rebbe Yochanan said it correctly, correct?
Yes, somebody quoted him wrong. So to figure it out, to analyze it and ask questions, maybe the Gemara is also inviting us to, supposed to ask questions and analyze. Okay, so that's the halacha that shiurim is halacha Moshe Messina. Tanya Namayach, we learn so in the Brisa, shiurim shalom halacha Moshe Messina. But the Brisa continues, Achem Omrim, Bezdino shal yabitz tiknam. Achem usually our mayor, somebody else said that not halacha Moshe Messina, seemingly, but the bezin of Yabitz for the ones who are talking. Yabitz, Rashi means not as a snil ben kinas, it's a pasuk in Divrei Hayamim, Perek Daled, pasuk Tes and Yud, over there talks about Yabitz. It's the name of somebody. It says Yavitz. The pasuk says Yavitz. Yud Ayin Beit Sadi. And Rashi brings down the Gemara that says it's Asnil Ben Kenaz. Rashi second white line. Asliya. Here Rashi over here.
Oh, he was the one who wrote the halachas that was forgotten when Moshe died.
Yes. Yeah, Asnil Ben Kenaz. Rashi second line. It's on the screen. Okay. So
I have down that he's the brother of Kalev and Yefuna. Is it possible?
So here it says that Yavitz is the one who was Matake in the Shiurim. But the Gemara says, how can it be? It has to be the Raisa. The pasuk says these are the mitzvahs. It means that the Torah says the mitzvahs and nobody else can make mitzvahs anymore.
Because he heard it from Moshe Rabbeinu. He remembered it from Moshe Rabbeinu. So it was from Moshe Rabbeinu.
What you're saying is going to be with the Gemara is going to be good. It says it can't be that a Navi is going to invent something new. After the Torah, there's no more inventions, and the Vim can say Musar and do the Torah, but it can't say new Torah. Ela Shakum because of yes, it means that they forgot. But surely it was their Raisa. The Tanakhama said it's Allah Moshe Sinai. Achem is not arguing. He's just saying that it was forgotten at one point, and the Yavitz is the one, like saying, Snebben Kenas, he brought back a lot of the halachas that were forgotten.
They figured it out through people.
Yeah, that's the Gemara and Tamur says that. Next Gemara. So what we just learned about a couple of things about Shiurim. We'll do the summary afterwards. The last Gemara just said, Shiurim Allah Moshe Messina. Do Allah Hashem Lo Lugmav. It says in the Mishnah that Shia for drinking is subjective. It depends on each person. That's Lo Lugmav. I translated in the Mishnah cheekful or two cheekfuls. I have difficulty with that translation. That's how the Mishnah Berurah seems to go. And we'll read the Gemara, and then I'm just going to suggest another possibility. Usually people go with the Mishnah Berurah's translation, and the word lugma they translate as a cheekful. Lo lugma is plural, they'll say, and it means two cheekfuls. I'll read the Gemara the way it's usually read, and I'll just say my problems, and everybody could either agree or disagree or answer. The Mishnah don't take not literally lo lugma, which would be translated as two cheekfuls, but it means enough that he should move it to one side of his mouth, and it will seem like two cheekfuls. Can anybody explain to me how, when you move it to one side of your mouth, it looks like two cheekfuls? If you move it to one side, then it says one cheekful. But that's one cheekful, not two cheekfuls.
If you're moving it back and forth, so it looks like your mouth is full. A person who would be swishing it back and forth would have the appearance of having a full mouth.
Why move it back
I
and forth?
disagree. I disagree. If he's going back and forth, then it looks like it's left, then it looks like it's right. It's more obvious that it's only one cheekful.
The very full one cheek.
Yeah, so why is that called two? Why is it says he moved it to one side? It looks like
Because then you could say that it's a small cheek.
one cheek. One cheek is one cheek. You move it to one side, it's one cheek. What are you saying, Rabbi Loza?
You have two cheekfuls on one side.
You don't have two cheeks. You can't put two cheekfuls into one cheek.
So, if you move it to one side, the year come out of lugma.
So I don't understand that. If you move it to one side, it looks like one cheekful. How do you move it to one side? It looks like two cheekfuls. One.
I think that it's extremely, a lot of pressure.
So you see one.
It's pushing the envelope.
Yeah, so you see one. So now how do you see two?
No, but the amount of volume within there is like two.
It seems, it looks like two.
Because it's so doich, it's like, you have an extreme swelling on one side. Wow.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay, I just,
I mean, it's the only way you can
I'm just
understand
voicing
it.
my,
Houses,
at the end, I'm gonna suggest a suggestion, but,
yeah, it's-
meanwhile, we just said the way the Mishnah Berurah says. The Gemara says, well, not below lugmav. It says in the Mishnah below lugmav. It doesn't say this law. It says below lugmav. Someone, I saw an article, they pointed out, or somebody, Mesifta, they pointed out that the Mishnah in Kalim says kimelo lugmav. That's what Shmuel's doing. Shmuel's coming to reconcile the Mishnah. Here it says below lugmav. In Kalim, the Mishnah says kimelo lugmav. So he says that our Mishnah also doesn't mean literally. The Gemara says our Mishnah says literally. It means the same as the other Mishnah, that it means approximately. Which the Gemara says it doesn't mean two cheekfuls, it means one cheekful.
But Rav, here, there's a yud there, that means it's double.
So what did I say wrong?
Because you're saying it's not two cheeks, it's one.
No, so I said that if you push it to one side, it looks like two cheekfuls. Then I asked, I don't understand the Metzias. But the words the Gemara says is that you move it to one side and it looks like two cheekfuls. And the Gemara doesn't mention even one time the word lugma. Doesn't say that it's below lugma, shenira kim below lugma. It says if you move it to one side, it looks like below lugma. That's how the Mishnah Berurah seems to learn. I heard of pshat that I think is a nice pshat. I just looked, what does the word lugma mean? So I'm translating it cheek the whole time. Where do you find the word lugma means a cheek? Anybody could support that the word lugma means a cheek? They bring down that the word legima doesn't mean a cheek, it means a swallow. So a whole new pshat. Read the Gemara again, that the Mishnah says a swallow, a gulpful. So a gulpful. It means a gulpful. Not do it a cheek, it means a gulpful. So it says not a complete gulpful. It means if you move it to one side of your mouth, it would look like a gulpful.
You
That makes
never-
a lot of sense.
When you drink, you don't fill up your cheeks.
Also good. So it says
No,
the
but
Mishnah
we
says
wanted to-
the Mishnah says a gulpful.
The gulp.
Can they give me how much you take in a gulp?
I
That's
don't know,
a-
let's say quarter.
one gulp.
I don't know. Quarter.
One gulp, a gulp, one gulp. Is that good? If the Mishnah would say a gulpful.
That's what means level.
That's I want to say Nupshat.
I like that.
I'm
better.
saying it based on the book Aruch HaShalom. He's a dictionary. He's not a Gemara. He's a dictionary. He says the word lugma and whatever language he says means, and legima in Hebrew it means a gulp. So if that's true, like the word legima, gemia, so it means the Mishnah says here that it's a gulpful. So Shmuel says it's not a gulpful. It means the amount that you put into one side of your mouth. It looks like a gulpful. The Gemara says it says fair Shmuel lugma. It means lugma. And the word lugma doesn't mean anything to do with a plural and one and two
Right.
cheekfuls, a whole different genre than Gemara. So I'm just saying a suggestion, and okay, but I'm saying that the Mishnah Berurah doesn't say that. The Mishnah Berurah says it means a cheek and it means one cheek and two cheeks. He's supposed to Pirush Mishnah Rambam, but I didn't see which Pirush Mishnah Mishnah Berurah saw. But in this new edition, it's supposed to be a better translation of the Arabic by Rabbi Kapach. It doesn't say that.
Rebbe,
Yes, please.
I think your Peshat fits perfectly. And that's actually what I meant when I said if a person has in their mouth and they move it from side to side, it looks full. It looks like it fills each side independently, but not two sides.
Right, it has nothing to do with two cheeks then. It means one cheek full, either cheek that you want, but it's only one cheek full. And the Gemara is not saying that it looks like two cheekfuls. If you say, well, look what means cheekfuls, so the Gemara is saying that, and this is how our scroll translated like the Mishnah Berurah, that you put it onto one side and it looks like two sides. I don't understand the Metzias. But if you say that well, look what means a gulpful, then everything reads very simply. And it means that it would be one cheekful. You can use the right side, the left side, you can go back and forth, whatever you want. It means one cheekful. So I'm just saying a possibility. Anyway, the Gemara continues. Akasha on Shmuel, who said that Melo Lugma does not mean literally. It means Kimelo Lugma. It says Mishnah, Brisa. Kama used to be a chayiv. Our subject, how much drinking are you chayiv for Yom Kippur? Beshami Yom Revius. A whole share Revius. We don't have. We say Melo Lugma. Beshami says Revius. We say Melo Lugma. Our Mishnah. Look at that. One says Melo Lugma. One says Kimelo Lugma. Obviously, they're arguing. And you see that Melo Lugma means literally, not Kimelo Lugma. I didn't think about that. They means a gulpful. I didn't notice this. So so I was saying that lugma also means a gulpful. No, so it's a problem. My chat is not good because if they say gemia means lugma means a gemia, so then the Gemara says also these are two saying the same thing.
Or maybe
I
one
mean-
is one like a community.
There's malo lugma and then there's kedei gemia. I take it back. I retract. I don't know.
I'm sorry, what Gemia means
Gemia means a gulpful.
gulpful?
That's in Gemara Shabbos over there. Chalav Kedei Gemiyah in the Parak Shmini. I
Where they
think.
knock it off, that's not.
No, I just retracted my pshat. Just erase it, please. The elite, as they say. So the Gemara says a kasha that the kasha is from this thing, but it still says lo lugmav, but it says kimel lugmav. So that's you can't say lo lugmav means kimel lugmav because somebody else is arguing over there. The Gemara says no, not impressed. We mean kimel lugmav. Achanami Kedei Sheira means that like Melo Lugma, but it doesn't mean actually. But the Gemara says, "Nu Yachi Hani Rebbe Lezer." Rebbe Lezer argues. He says Melo Lugma. There's machlokas is going on. The Gemara says, "He given you Melo Lugma dachuk." If it has to be berevach, like a loose kind of a Melo Lugma, or even a little bit exact. So Rashi says that the one who says Melo Lugma is bigger. Means it's going to be a cooler. It's not chayiv until it's a broad Melo Lugma, and Rebbe Lezer says even a mitzumtzum. Was also going to be chayiv. The Master Kasha, Maskif Rav Shayim, can't ever let me call Beshama Mechom Yisrael. We know that usually Beshama is Machber Yisrael's Mekel, and when it's the opposite, when Beshama is Mekel, there's a list in Edios. It has an exhaustive list of all the places where Beshama is Mekel. And according to what you're saying now, that Lo Lugmav is not literal. But what we say before, Beshama says a revius. Yisrael says Lo Lugmav. If you say Yisrael is Lo Lugmav Mamish, then the one says it's more than a revius. So Beshama is Machmer, that he's chayiv on a smaller amount. But if you say Bistila means not a Lo Lugmav, only one cheekful, so whatever that one came Lo Lugmav, so then the more understands that it's less than a revius. So it means Bistila is Machmer, that you chayiv on a smaller amount. And we know that there's an exhaustive list of one Bishama is Mekel, and it should have started the Gemara says, "Ki itchil og melech habashin nishil." That v'luhu beisham melechumra. And the question when it came up, how much you chayiv for drinking on Yom Kippur? So it wasn't talking about a regular person, not about a big person, og melech habashin, a huge person.
That's such a strange
That
question.
means that someone came in. It wasn't that og melech habashin, but a huge person came in and he says, "What's my share to be chayiv on Yom Kippur?" So maybe it was a chola that was sick and he was a big man and he wanted to know how much he should drink less than shiur. So they said, so Beis Hillel said, "Lo lugma." And Beis Shammai says a revius of this big person is smaller than the regular person. The Lo Lugma is going to be less.
Right, but up now we're saying it's always by drinking, it's according to the size of the person.
We're still saying that.
But why is he saying revealed?
No, he has an opinion. We're talking about Beis Hillel the whole time. Beis Shammai says revius. He doesn't hold that as subjective. He holds that as subjective, that objective. That is one share, and he's going to be a chumrah. But Beis Shammai, that a big person is going to be high in a smaller amount. So what?
I'm sorry. What is it? What is itchil?
He was asked nishal in Aramaic itchil. When he was asked in the Beis Medrash, it was when it was asked in the Beis Medrash, it was the big person. That a big person. So the more I finish that, but I think more I say that don't take Lo Lugmav literally. It means Kim Lo Lugmav, which means you move it to one side of your mouth. I think the Mishabura goes the way you measure it would mean to fill up your mouth to max capacity, and then take half of that. Fill up your mouth as much as you could, and then spit it out and take half. That's going to be the one cheekful.
Okay, but you have to this area.
Even there in the middle. So maybe I got it wrong.
Why would you want to do that?
Just take one cheekful. The Iraq can look
Why are we going to two cheekbones?
because it looks like two cheekbones.
Oh.
I take it back. No. Maybe I misquoted it. But the point is that it should fill one cheekful to capacity, and that looks like two cheekbones. If we'll take the Mishabura's way of saying it. Nugamor. Not Nugamor. I mean, going back on the subject, and the Gemara is going to ask all kinds of questions about strange facts that were being told. That everybody's asking the whole time that how come it's subjective, and how come the difference between food and drink? Food is one standard share, and by drink it depends on the person. Why all these things? And the Gemara is going to say, and all these questions, the answers are going to be kacha. Like that's the way it is. Those are the facts. You can't argue with the facts. But by Yom Kippur, the whole issue is when a person is afflicted, not afflicted. And how come the body works that way? Kasha. That's the way the body works. That by food, everybody is going to be affected the same way by a standard amount of food. But liquid, it goes each person subjective. That's just an introduction to the whole rest of the Gemara number days. Come out to hold up. The Gemara continues. Maskefla Rav Zera. How come by food it's a standard for everybody? Kosebes is the share that takes away affliction for everybody, no matter how big you are or how small you are. But by food, each person is going individually. How come? That's the way they measure it. They evaluate it. That's the way it is. If a person needs the size of a date So then he has Yishuv Adas, means he's not afflicted anymore. Less than that, he doesn't have Yishuv Adas. But by drink, it depends each person on the size of his mouth. That's the way it is. It's a question of the facts, not on the halacha. The halacha is only based on the facts. The facts are everything's telling you if he's afflicted or not, and food is a standard for everybody, and drink is individual. Next kasha.
Rebbe,
Yes,
Rebbe, there's one clear kasha on that, and that is that it's all going down to the stomach, and the stomach is the same size. So why shouldn't the shirim for achila and shtia be the same size if the stomach is the same size? I mean, from person to person is different, but he has the same person has the same size stomach.
I'm not following. The Gemara says that's the way it is. Kacha, that's the way it is. A person Yishuv Adas is telling the Kosevas no matter how big his stomach is. That's what there was. Kasha was. That's
So then what we're saying. So then what we're saying is that Yishuv Adas is a subjective issue, not an objective issue, and each person is satisfied subjectively by a different share by shtia than by achila. That's what we're saying.
I missed something. I didn't get it. The Gemara is saying that food is objective. There's one share for food that makes everybody miyushav, and less than that, nobody's miyushav. And by drink, it depends on each person.
We're saying the same thing, except I'm emphasizing the whole Indian is Yishuv Adas. That Yishuv Adas is subjective. By shtia.
The issue is Yishuv Adas. That's the Gemara's whole issue. By Yom Kippur, everything's telling Yishuv Adas that he shouldn't be afflicted. That if he's afflicted, if he's supposed to be afflicted, if he ate enough or drank enough not to be afflicted, that's the chiyuv. And by drink, it's subjective. Each person is different, and by the size, according to his size, and food is standard. Everybody. Next question. By food, a big person and a small person are all the same. How could it be? Amalei, that's the way it is. Everybody, if they ate a koseves, they can have some Yishuv Adas. Less than that, no one's going to have Yishuv Adas. Of course, there's a difference, a big person and a small person. It's true that a regular person is going to have more Yishuv Adas when he's a koseves than a chabashan, but he's going to have some Yishuv Adas. Less than a koseves, nobody has any Yishuv Adas. Once there's a koseves, then it's true that it depends, but that's only a question of more or less. But everyone's going to have some Yishuv Adas. And that's the reason why everyone will be high. Next question. The quality of the food doesn't make a difference either. You would think that a fatty food gives more Yishuv Adas. So how could you say that he eats a piece, a koseves, a fat meat, that's the share, less than that is not chayiv? And little bit fanim just means tendrils of vine, like something that doesn't have any protein, let's call it. So also you're going to say that the shares are kazayis, doesn't Yishuv Adas have to do with what kind of food it is? He says, no, it doesn't. That's the way it is. Those are the facts. They're abundant evaluated. The facts are that if he had that amount, he's going to have Yishuv Adas. Less than the Kesefis is not. But it's true that there's going to be a fluctuation. But a little bit kind of important. If he eats fat meat, it'll be very Yishuv Adas. A little bit kind of less Yishuv Adas, but it'll have some Yishuv Adas. So that's the way it is. Next kasha. Now the one's going over a similar idea that in the time frame, the time lapse, how much you have to eat the food in order to be chayiv. So we know usually the shir is kazayis b'achilas pras. Whenever you eat something, chayla, whatever, matzah, mora, whatever you have to eat. So it's only considered eating if you eat a tiny bit and then 2 hours later eat another bit. It's not going to be that you didn't eat it. It has to be in a certain time frame. So the shir is b'achilas pras. Pras means a half a loaf. And the machlokes, how big is the loaf? We're talking about the size of volume of 8 eggs or 6 eggs. It comes out of pras, which means a half a loaf is either 3 eggs or 4 eggs. And that's machlokes in the Tanakh, and even in the halacha, how you pass them like Rashi holds 4 eggs and Rambam holds 3 eggs. Whatever it is, that's kedechilas pras. So if you ate a kazayis in the time frame, what time frame is it still considered that you ate it? A kazayis in the time that it takes to eat, let's say 3 eggs, means you don't have to eat a kazayis with the achilas kazayis. Normal eating would say you eat a kazayis as long as it takes to eat a kazayis. But no, if you ate a kazayis, even if you stretch it out, as long as it takes to eat 3 eggs, you ate 1 kazayis. That's still considered eating. How about a kosevas and kippur? It's a different shear. It's much bigger than a kazayis. So you might think that the time frame also would be bigger. That if you ate a kosevas and the time that it takes 3 eggs, how about 5 eggs, 10 eggs? It could be that since a kosevas is so much more, it should be proportionally bigger. How come you say the kazayis bechilas pras and the kosevas also bechilas pras? We should say that kosevas should be even in a longer time span, should also be considered still eating. It's so much more food. That's the way it is. It has nothing to do with a kazayis. You're right. It happens just to measure what gives a person Yishuv Adas. And if he eats the food in this time span it gives a Mishabadas, and if not, not. So they're all good kashas, but the answer to all the questions is the same. Those are the physical facts. That's the way a person is built. The next kasha is not our subject, but going on to a different subject. Masif Larava. Here it says Bekoseva, some of it gets Kazayis B'Techilas Pras, Chatzi Pras B'Techilas Pras. There's another law which we didn't, not our subject, but we spoke about Tumas Ochlin before. If the food which became tummy. There's a halacha that food became. What if a person eats the tummy food? He ate the tummy food. Does he become tummy? So there's such a thing called Tumas Gevia, that the person himself becomes tummy. With the rice or not. But with Rabbana, that's not, I jumped. The Gemara is going to say soon that it's that will be the next couple of lines. But if a person eats tummy food, he becomes tummy. How much does he have to eat in order to become tummy? Chatzi pras. Chatzi pras means half of this loaf, half of this half. The pras means already a half. We'll say that the pras is the loaf is 8 eggs, so pras is 4 eggs. So half of that is going to be 2 eggs. Or if you hold that it's 6, 3, 1.5, whatever it is. So if he ate that amount of food, so he comes tummy. How much time? What's the time frame that he has to eat it in order to become tamei? Also, this pras. So it's so much more food. That's the same similar cash as before. Before we said about a kazayis, then about a kosevas. So then we said it as Yishabadas. But over here, talking about that they should become tamei, nothing to do with Yishabadas. So also you're going to say that it's all totally in the same time frame. Amalei Papa, the love the rice. This tumah that a person becomes tamei. The word gvia means a body. Tumas aguf. That the person becomes tamei from eating tamei food is only rabbanan. So since it's rabbanan, so they will make it. Why is the kula? That he's only tamei if he ate it very fast. If he ate it chatzi pras but dechilas pras. But if he would have eaten in longer than that, he's not tamei. So it's a kula. You're right. And since it's only rabbanan, so they will make it. But the Gemara is very surprised. You're saying that this is tamei rabbanan. Well, did the Papa say that it's only rabbanan? Well, Papa himself said it's daraisa. It says don't eat these foods and don't become tummy. The Papa says this pasuk is a drasha to say that if you eat the tummy food, you are going to become tummy. Say dash is from a pasuk. So isn't it daraisa? And he even says, "We can't give you the rice." He says that as the rice. The Gemara says no. It means rabbanan. Very strange. Even though he says we can't give you the rice, don't take it serious. It means that it's a remez that give you for rabbanan. The rabbanan cross machloek alma. Tumas is only rabbanan. So even though it's a strange thing, but you see that the Gemara might say that here you see as the rice, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to see in the sukkah if it's the rice or rabbanan. So what did the Gemara say? Just to sum up the Gemara, that shear for eating to be chayiv and Kippur is when he takes away yishuv adas. He takes away affliction. That's called yishuv adas. And all the facts that we said, it's just physical facts. That's the way people work. That not people work. That's the way people were made. That a certain amount of food gives them yishuv adas. Less than that, not does make a difference if it's big or small. And also by drinking, it has to do with the individual. And the shear is going to be a achilas pras. And even if you have kashas from other places, it's kasha. I say kasha anamaisa. That's the way it is. Okay, next Gemara. Now we're talking about if you had food and drink. So if you have
Rabbi, one question. I don't understand the last conclusion of what is the rule when we have a meforish pasuk that we can just pass it off as Makta da Alma.
The meforish pasuk has all drusha. So the question is if the drusha is a real drusha or what's a remez. And the only way you can tell is only if from the Sugya Gemara. Even if the Gemara is a pasuk shenemar, it doesn't mean that's the Raisa. Very important cloud to see in the whole Shas. That even if it says that something is Raisa, it doesn't necessarily mean. It doesn't mean if it brings a pasuk, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the Raisa. It could be an asmachta. Next Gemara. Amar kol ochlin, Amar Papa. If somebody ate a piece of meat, a piece of meat doesn't make difference, but together with salt. It happens to be raw meat. Together with salt. The point is to say that salt is not food. You're not chayv eating salt. But if you ate food together with the salt, so the salt is mistarf to the shir also. It becomes food. Salt is not food. Since people eat it that way, they eat it together with salt. So the salt also becomes combined to the shir. And a similar thing. You have brine together with the vegetables. So it becomes one. Like a kosevas or mikipur. It's considered a kosevas, and he's high for eating, even though the vegetables alone weren't a shear, but together with the brine, it became a shear, so he's high. And the Gemara says, treat that. Sear, not like salt. Sear is food. Shita, why not? The answer is, you might think that's considered liquid. And we said that food and drink are not mitzvah. Now the time of mashkul, you might think that it's considered drink. The sear is considered a liquid, and therefore it's not mitzvah. The chiddush is that anything which is coming to enhance the food, it's also considered food. So even though tzir alone is considered liquid, but if you do it together with the food, so then it's considered food. Amish Lakish. If somebody ate and he's not hungry at all, he had it in Kippur, Achila Gasa. He ate he's no appetite at all. It's disgusting already to eat. Achila Gasa means without any appetite at all. So how do you do that? How do you do that in Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur, everybody's starving. How could you eat Achila Gasa in Yom Kippur? So they talk about matzah, let's say. If you eat Achila Gasa matzah, you ate a full meal, then you can eat matzah. You're not Yosef because it's not no appetite at all. But how do you do that in Yom Kippur? So Rashi says, as soon as the fast came in, you eat it full to full, and then he keeps on eating into Yom Kippur. So it's Achila Gasa. So he's not Chai. My timer, Hashem knows who next it, it's not considered eating at all. The point here is that he should not take away the affliction, and whoever is not afflicted is going to be Chai for eating on Yom Kippur, but it's not taking away affliction. He wasn't afflicted. He was full. So he's not Chai for Yom Kippur. Of course, you're not allowed to, but it's not Chai.
Rebbe, is the reason that it's called Pater of Al Aser because even though it's Gasa, it still has a shame Achila?
It's like a Chatzi Shir. Why do you ask it? It's not even called Achila even. I hear the Kasha. I don't know. The more continues. I'm Rabbi Yirmiyah. The rest of it is a bonus now. I'm Rabbi Yirmiyah. I'm Rish Lakish. Once we said that Achila Gasa is not considered eating, so the more continues other applications. If a non-Kohen ate Truma Achila Gasa, that he had no appetite, he was full, also it's not called eating. Yes, he does have to pay like a mazik. He destroyed it. It burnt. He ate it up. But he doesn't pay chomish. Chomish is only when you eat it. He didn't eat it. So the Karen is for destroying it, like he would be a mazik. Why should it be chayv kares? It usually is chayv misa. You're right. Yeah, it's usually chayv misa b'dei shemayim. So it should say there's not chayv misa b'dei shemayim. But as far as the payment goes, you're right. It's a good point. And also as far as this would be here's someone that's shogig over here. He's saying if it would have been amazing, it would have said so. Is not chayv misa b'dei shemayim. That's not the way to say it. But he's talking about the fact that he has to pay. So he pays Karen like any kind of mazik, but he doesn't pay the chomish because he didn't eat it. Kiyochal pratal mazik over there says that it's only chayv if he eats, and there if he just destroys it, he only has to pay for the value, not for the extra chomish. I'm Rabbi Yirmiyah. I'm Rabbi Yochanan. Zar shekoses. We have time to go on to the next daf. Zar shekoses. So somebody chewed on raw barley. It's also not called eating. To eat raw barley is not called eating. So therefore, if you ate barley of truma, because it's not called eating, it's called destroying it. Same thing. The pasuk says if you eat tichai, but here he just destroyed it. Case. So I just made underline because again they didn't let me to highlight it. So no kabbalistic reasons why this is underlined and not highlighted. So Shabbalah Shazafin Shal Truma Bikian Vachmanacher. Non-Kohen swallowed shizafin. So Rashi seems to say prunes. I'm not sure if she's even prunes nowadays. Rashi seems to say that. I'm not sure. There's a word over there. Prunes, maybe. I'm not sure. Second line in Rashi. But the point is that he afterwards vomited and it still looks the same. And somebody else ate it. It's not considered food still. After somebody vomited food, is it still considered food? So he says, he didn't chew it, he just swallowed it, the first one, and then he vomited it. Somebody else ate it. The first one ate it. And Rashi says that swallowing is also considered eating. He has to pay ken v'chomish because it's considered eating. But the second one only pays for eitzim. What does that mean? It's not a food anymore. Once somebody ate it and vomited, it's not considered food anymore. And if anything, it's just fuel. It's good for fuel. So he has to pay.
So the second one would not be Pater Al Aser because it's not a Maisa Achila, but he'd be Chayev Niziki.
He's saying it wouldn't be even considered food. He wouldn't be even Aser to eat it. Just that he's destroying somebody else's firewood. Yeah, could be that. It'd be mutter even. It could be. Once it's not considered food, it could be his mutter to eat. And who was he paid to? He pays to the first one because not the coin anymore because the first one paid the Keren B'chomish. So the second one now is the owner of this firewood, and the second one pays the price of firewood to the first one. Okay. Yashikoach, everybody. Thank you. We'll be back in about 6 minutes. We didn't do the review. If anybody's still holding on. The Gemara said the Sheres Kosefes, by Yom Kippur the Sheres Kosefes, and from there we learn out also when it says in Kol Ochel Asher Yochel, it's also not going to be a kazayis. It's going to be the size of how much the base of Leah could handle in one gulp, and that happens to be the size of an egg of a chicken. After that, it says that when someone ate chaylev and thinks he did an avera, he should write it down, the details, because maybe the Bezdin will say it's not an avera. Shiur Malach Moshe Messinai, and Achirim said that it was forgotten and reinstated by Asnil Ben Kenaz. Below Lugmav, it says in the Mishnah below Lugmav, it says it's not actually below Lugmav, it's Kim below Lugmav, which means that he moves it to one side of his mouth, one cheek. The difference between liquid and food, that food is standard and liquid is subjective, is because that's the way it is. Also, the fact that a big person and a small person, and the fact that different kinds of quality of foods, also shomein and lobek fanim, that's how it is. That the kosevis is a share for yishuv adas, and less than that is not. As far as also a side point about chilas pras by kosevis, the share is chilas pras. Also by tumas ochlim, the share is chilas pras, even though it's different share. The more comes out that tumas kaviyas drop on it. And the last thing was about salt can be considered part of the food, even though it's usually not a food. Steer is considered food, even though it's usually a drink. And achila gas is not chayiv on Yom Kippur. It's not considered eating. Also by truma, it's not considered eating, and only you have to pay for damaging it, not for eating it. Wouldn't be a chomesh. And the last thing the Gemara said was also eating soy was also not considered eating. And somebody who vomited something he ate already is not considered food anymore, and they only would pay the me'etzim, but wouldn't pay as food. Yashikach, everybody. Thank you. I'll be back in 5 minutes.
19 and 18. I said, why? It's not enough cool. That's not the reason. Then I went, nothing was filthy. If you use it a lot, you just gotta clean it every couple of weeks. They tell you that.
Okay, shalom everybody, welcome. We're in Chazara of Mizmor Lamed. Mizmor Shechan HaKos HaBayis HaDavid. We just mentioned, Agav, that Minig Ashkenaz, it got in somehow into the Ashkenaz Sidurim, but they say that it has no makom. The result is the one who says to say it after Hodu. So if they don't say it after Hodu, so there's no reason. That's what the Ha'aras on the Ashkenaz Sidurim say. It's a chiddush that they say. It's a chiddush that they say Mizmor Shir. The Parshas and Chanukah Savais means the inauguration of the Beis HaMikdash. Just to point out that David didn't live in the time of the Beis HaMikdash. It could be that he prepared it when it will be built. And the question was, what does it have to do with the Beis HaMikdash? Why is this considered a inauguration song? Some say that has to do with because David's personal life, that he was cast away from by Hashem, and when Hashem showed by the Beis HaMikdash that he was loved by Hashem, so that is his coming up from the bore. But I'm just pointing out that it sounds a little difficult because it doesn't seem to be the inauguration, the national.
Rob,
Yes.
you're not solo, but if you could just pull the microphone a little bit closer, would that be possible?
Till now they said that it was good, so I'm not sure if I did something wrong.
No, you're fine. I mean, you're fine. I just, you know, I'm a little hard of hearing, so and I have it on full blast, and I just can't.
We still want to get the.
Yeah, I don't want to miss any of your enunciation. Also, I'm not sure. It says you're recording. Is that intentional or?
Yes, I didn't turn it off yet. Thank you very much for.